Good evening and welcome to the October 24th meeting of the Murfreesboro City School Board. We're glad to have those of you that are with us tonight, and those of you that are watching on television, we're glad to have you as well. At this time, I'm going to ask you to please stand. We have two young gentlemen, Mr. Brock Ferris, a first grade student at Irma Siegel, Mr. Alex Romine, a fifth grade student at Northfield, to lead us in our pledge, followed then by our moment of silence. And I would encourage you during our moment of silence to remember our city for the upcoming events before long. Gentlemen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And now our moment of silence. Thank you. Members of the board, you have a copy of the agenda in front of you. I'd like to have a motion to approve the agenda, please.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. King. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Ballard. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? And there is none. I'm going to break just a minute before we get into our communications. We have with us tonight Representative Brian Terry, who has a special announcement to make to all of us, and we appreciate the work you're doing very much.
Thank you very much. I'd like to thank you and the school board members for having me out tonight. With all the issues and a lot of concerns that there's been in education with TN Ready and the BEP and evaluations and basically the overall state of education, I've been in frequent contact with the Tennessee Department of Education, and I've been able to get Commissioner McQueen to agree to come down for an education roundtable that I'll be able to moderate. So the Commissioner of Tennessee Department of Education will come down for an education roundtable to be held at the Rutherford County School Board facility with both the Murfreesboro City School Board and the Rutherford County School Board on Monday, December 4th at 5 p.m. And what I envision is the Commissioner providing us with a bit of historical background on what's going on with education, a state of education update, followed by some Q&A and some feedback that we can give to her and get back from her. I know there will be a lot of questions, and I've asked a couple of people to be point on this, Linda Gilbert for the city and Lisa Moore for the county. And so I hope to get you guys an email in the morning with some of those details, the email addresses. So if parents, teachers, administrators, or you guys have questions, we can gather those. And for an efficient meeting and for a productive meeting, we can get those organized for the event. Thank you guys, and look forward to seeing you there.
Thank you very much. We appreciate the efforts that you're putting forth, and I know you've been working on this for several days, maybe weeks, but we appreciate very much the interest that you have in public education, along with many other things while you're in the legislature. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you, guys.
Thank you for being here with us. And I'm sorry we missed you last time we met. We just got our wires crossed. I know. That's happened. Okay.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. All right, communications.
Okay. Hello. Mitchell Nielsen's Gail Porterfield will be competing in this year's Read to Succeed Celebrity Spelling Bee. That's Thursday, November the 9th, so we wish her the best of luck in her spelling. Ms. Newell would also like to encourage the members of the board to attend that event. So once again, it's Read to Succeed, November 9th. And if you want to make a donation in Gail's name, we're okay with that too. So if you remember, Robin Mitchell Nielsen was actually the champion about 2 years ago, so she's very proud of her title. Mitchell Nielsen would also like to thank Mr. Alan Harrison, former MCS maintenance supervisor, for his donation of $100 to our field trip scholarship account. She also wants me to note that he thinks M&S is his favorite, and, you know, there's no bias, I'm sure, on that one. But we do appreciate our former staff members remembering the needs of our children. Kim Frank has been chosen to present at the Tennessee Principals Networking Day in December at Trevecca University. Kim will be addressing positive behavioral supports and ways to transform behaviors through a tiered approach. As you know, Kim was interviewed just a couple of weeks ago by PBS for her ACES grant. So we are proud of all the things that Kim is bringing to our schools. Murfreesboro City Schools would also like to thank Murfreesboro Linus Club for their money and food donation to the backpack program. And while I'm going, Irma Siegel Elementary would like to invite you to their farm to school team would like to invite you for a ribbon cutting of their new greenhouse. That's going to happen this Friday at 9 a.m., which is October 27th. So if you'd like to come out and see one more greenhouse up at one of our schools, that would be great. We're also going to be crunching apples at noon on Friday. This is part of the Farm to School month, and we did it last year. Everyone had a good time and enjoyed a little bit of an apple as we continue to work with our children on Farm to School and helping them understand where all of that good produce comes from. So, additionally, the City Schools Foundation will be funding 26 teacher grants this year, totaling over $53,000. They will be presenting those grants or the checks for those grants to teachers on November 6th at the home of Sydney and Liz McPhee. We appreciate the McPhees hosting this event. And so $52,000 going into our schools. We're pretty proud of it. The grants range this year from around $200 to a little bit over $8,000. So that was nice to see. Also, on January the 26th, the foundation will host the 11th Annual Excellence in Education Gala. We're honoring Drs. Mary and Max Moss and featuring Reeves Rogers Elementary School in Excellence in Education. And our run is how we raise dollars to fund the $52,000 in grants. So, and that will be it. Thank you. Any questions?
There is also a ribbon cutting Friday morning, I think, at the new Big Lots.
Yes.
And it's
Right.
a point in time where they will present two of our schools with, I think it's $2,000 donations, I believe.
Right. Big Lots will be doing the ribbon cutting on Friday, and they will be presenting checks to Mitchell Nilsson and Northfield Elementary. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, ma'am, very much. All right. Consent items. I have a motion to approve the consent items.
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Renier. Have a second.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. King. Any questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? And there is none. All right. Action items. Board policies.
Okay.
The first policy is the separation practices for teachers, tenured teachers, and the separation practices for non-tenured teachers. Do y'all have any additional questions? This is up for second reading.
Any questions on second reading, Mr. Ballard?
The policies for both the tenured and the, unless I'm mistaken in my reading, and the non-tenured, what are the steps of counseling prior to termination?
They have many, I don't know if you want to take this.
Is it defined for the employee to understand, if I'm getting my second counseling, I'm out, it's over with?
Ralph, do you want to address some of the things that we do, if you would?
Uh, 5200, 5.200 for tenured teachers. It's once they have tenure, we work with them, and if they are not performing up to satisfactory levels, we do what Mary Ann Blanks, University of Tennessee, Knoxville, came up with what we call an improvement plan. It's a 2-year process where the central office staff supports the teacher. They go in, supports the teacher. The principal, assistant principal do the same. They have quarterly meetings about the progress of the teacher, and then our efforts are to help that teacher become more successful in the classroom. That is our efforts. At the end of the first year, we may make modification of the improvement plan. Well, each quarter, we may make modifications to the improvement plan. And then each quarter, we talk with the teacher and update the status, what they're doing great, what are some areas that they still need to be continued to see improvement. At the end of the second year, if the teacher is still not performing up to satisfactory levels, the decision could be made to recommend dismissal to the school board. Now, on 5.201, separation practices for non-tenured teachers, we do a lot of the same, but it's not a 2-year process. The principal, the assistant principal, and central office staff work with teachers who do not have tenure. We go in there, we model for the teacher, we observe the teacher, we work with the teacher to see what the weaknesses are, what areas of improvement. There is no 2-year window. If at the end of a year, if we've done everything that we could do to help that teacher succeed, we could just non-renew that teacher.
But those things are understood by the teachers and the staffs, that those are the steps that they're going to receive as a a chance to improve. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, thank you. I didn't know if that needed to be in the policy or if that's in some other understandings you have with them.
Okay, other questions? Mr. King?
Yes, I want to go back to what I was talking about the last meeting. And I may be reading the version that didn't get updated or what have you, but it's 5.200, separation practices for tenured teachers. And let me go to my notes. Line 45. And I believe that's on page
15 minutes.
Yes, for the tenured teachers, and I'm actually beginning at line 44. In no event should an argument last more than 15 minutes. When they say argument, it means the teacher gets to come before the board, and the board shall hear the appeal on the record with no new evidence. The appealing party may appear before the board to argue why the adverse ruling should be overturned. In no event should an argument last more than 15 minutes unless the board should vote to extend additional time. And then it goes through the thing. When we go to the other policy, 5.201, for non-separation practices for non-tenured, and let me find line 35. And we go to that. It's on the top of the second page. The board shall hear the appeal, which is just like the tenured. No new evidence shall be introduced, which is just like tenured. Then, the non-tenured teacher may appear in person or be represented by counsel and argue why the decision should be modified or reversed. The board shall take one of the following actions. So to me, it skips over the 15-minute time limit, and it comes across to me that if the individual has an attorney, the attorney could argue, I've got all day. There's no time limit here. And to me, I think we ought to add the time limit, or that we could extend time if we felt if we needed to. But to me, as I read this and understand this, it's open. It's wide open.
Ms. Baker, would you like to comment?
Well, the statute doesn't specify the time limit. I'm not sure where the time limit came from. Of course, the chair and the board has the discretion if they think the argument's becoming repetitive to say it's repetitive in the argument. So I would always recommend to make sure that you give the employee the opportunity to exhaust any argument they have, because this is their due process right. Yeah. And and I would, if they want to extend the time limit, I would encourage the board to do that in a reasonable fashion. So it's at the discretion of the board whether you want to include that 15-minute language in there to give some frame of reference, or if you just like to delete it altogether.
Or, do we add it for the non-tenured, or do we remove it from the tenured? Or could we make it 30 minutes? do we have that flexibility?
And-
But to me, we ought to have it equal for both, in a sense, or it's unlimited for the non-tenured. And I feel like the tenured is kind of getting the short end of the stick, for lack of a better word.
And haven't seen arguments, actual individual arguments. Sometimes questioning of witnesses may extend for a long time, but they typically, 15 minutes would be adequate. But if at any point someone felt the need to go beyond that, and there's a reasonable basis for it, I would recommend the board grant that.
I think our recommendation would be to delete the 15 minutes.
To delete it from the tenured?
Yes.
Okay. So I was thinking we might want to add the restriction for the non-tenured and keep it in the, I mean,
As Ms. Baker
but it's up
stated,
to- I mean, that's why we're here to vote on it, I guess.
if attorney is arguing the case, and if we limit them to just 15 minutes on an appeal, they could be justified in winning that appeal for another hearing.
They could indicate they didn't have the ability to fully exhaust all of their argument.
So do you need a motion to make that change, or just by our
I
discussion?
think Mr. King had some other questions from the last meeting that
Yeah, the only other question I have is, did you ever find out when it says days, that some instances it said business or calendar, but the majority it did not? Did
And
you ever
in-
find out what the
In the
understanding?
statute, with statutory construction, the rules of statutory construction is if it is 7 days or less, that is typically calendar days. If it is 7 days or more, then it's considered work days. And most statutes, if they want it to be work days, or if they want it to be more specific than that rule of thumb, then they will state in there. And these references were pulled straight from what the statute list. So if the statute was silent as to whether it was calendar or work days, we would look at, is it 7 or more?
Okay. I just didn't know if we needed to spell that out or if that was understood or,
Yeah, I don't believe we need to.
okay.
So our recommendation would be to delete the 15 minutes on the tenure teacher policy and keep everything else the same as is.
I would disagree.
Okay?
I would like to see us add the terminology of 15 minutes for the non-tenured. And the only reason I say that is if you don't have some limitation, it's like Ms. King said, it's wide open and it could go on forever. If you set a limitation, now we may not want to be 15 minutes, we may want to say 30 minutes. But I think it would be good to have a limit. It's kind of like driving down the highway. You have a limit on your speed. It may differ from one section of the road to the other, but there is still that limit, and you're not to exceed that. I would just, I like the,
We could grant more time.
we can
just like
grant
the
more
tenured,
time.
just
I
like the
don't think
tenured.
that's, yeah, and
time.
whether we set the limit at 15 minutes or 30 minutes or whatever, I just like that part of it. That's just my opinion. Ms. Smith?
So, Ms. Baker, so what would your opinion be?
Really, I could argue either way. I think putting in the 15 minutes helps give you a rule of thumb, but you know that it would be my recommendation if someone requests that it be extended to extend it. And of course, that's a reasonable extension. And if at any time, and a hearing officer would be overseeing this, and at any time if someone's becoming repetitive in their argument, hearing officers will typically cut them off, or one of the attorneys will make an objection that it's irrelevant or repetitive, and the hearing officer would cut off the argument at that point.
Ms. Renier?
I'm just unsure. I was clarify it in my mind. If we ever got into this situation, does the person have to, someone who's coming to represent a client, let's say, to the board, would they want to say, we realize there's a 30-minute limitation, however, we would like to extend the time before the discussion begins? Or at that 30 minutes, the board chair says, you've reached your limit, now we need to decide if we can let you continue.
I think that would be an issue that would be discussed during pre-hearing conferences with the hearing officer. And it also could, depending on the heat of the moment, be raised within the hearing as well.
Again, do you need to make a motion?
Yeah. I move that we add the 15-minute time limit with the ability to grant an extension of time to the non-tenured policy 5.201, I believe that's the correct number, to mirror the tenured policy 5.200.
I second the motion.
I have a motion by Mr. King and a second by Ms. Smith. Any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? And there is none. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ringstaff.
All right, Mr. Anderson?
Yes, sir. Next policy for second reading is fiscal management goals, policy 2.100. There were no changes made in this policy from the first reading.
Have a motion to approve 2.100 on second reading?
So moved.
So
yeah.
moved.
Well, let's see. Mr. King, second. We'll say Ms. Vernier made the motion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposition? And there is none. Thank you.
Next policy is annual operating budget 2.200, and it replaces fiscal management 2, and there also were no changes on this policy as presented the first time.
Have a motion to approve policy 2.200 on second reading.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Ballard. Have a second.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? And there is none. Ms. Baker, do we need to take each one of these individually for second reading, or can we approve?
See, were they under consent? If they're under consent, or were they? No. Yeah, you need to take them individually.
Okay, all right.
All right. The next one is line item transfer authority, policy 2.201. There are no changes made in this one either.
All right.
Move to approve?
Thank you, Ms. Vernier. Have a second.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Ballard. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? And there is none. Thank you.
All right, the next policy is on revenues. It's 2.400. It replaces fiscal management 3. We did make the change under the extended school program on lines 18 and 19, where we had corrected it from going to the individual schools as to going into the ESP bank account. And that was the only change that we made in this policy, is what we had talked about at the first reading.
I do have questions on this one.
All right. Ms. Smith?
So on, and I'm sorry, I don't think I was part of the conversation on this in the first reading. On line 2, any money collected by any school shall be documented by a written receipt.
Yes, ma'am.
Is that feasible?
It's required under Tennessee code in the
So
Tennessee Internal
does that
School
mean like when you pay for lunch, extras for lunch, they don't get a receipt? Or if you buy a magnet in the front office, or
Well, the lunch is under a separate reading than this.
Budget,
It's under
okay.
federal. On the magnet, it depends on if the school's selling it or if the
booster, whatever.
booster club is selling it. If the booster club is selling it, no, it's under theirs. If we as a school district are selling it through our office, then it's going into our bank account, then yes, we have to record
Have
it.
a written receipt for every time you hand some money in. What about, and it may be later on here, what about a field trip?
Field trip money, the teachers collect the money, they have to record it and turn it in as the money's collected, and it has to be deposited within three banking days.
But do you get a receipt?
Not the individual. The teacher fills it out on an envelope or a piece of paper and submits it.
I see, okay. So every time a parent puts money in, we shouldn't expect a written receipt? And I would
No.
hope not.
No.
Okay, good. So, because that's a lot of time. And then in line 15, school fees shall be waived for students who receive free or reduced price lunches. Every child in Murfreesboro City Schools receives free lunch.
Well, the state law says if it's a school fee, they don't have to pay the fee if it's part of the instructional program. At some point, the district may have to not be in the community eligibility program anymore if the federal government takes it away. So even though every child right now is under the community eligibility program, that may not be the case in future years.
So the word that is helpful to us in this is shall, I guess, because otherwise we're saying anybody, no matter their ability to pay, could be waived.
Mr. Anderson, what I think it's talking about here is the students who would qualify for free and reduced lunch, right?
Right. And
So-
we get a list from the state every month that shows who qualifies under the guidelines, under the federal guidelines for free and reduced. It's not just because we are in the community eligibility program that everyone gets it. Not every student's going to qualify for the
So
program.
should we change that for the purposes of our existing process for students who qualify to receive free or reduced price lunches?
It's kind of semantics because the list that we get tells us who is on free and reduced, and we as a district have adopted a community eligibility program. So even though they're getting a free lunch, it's the qualification under the federal guidelines. It's really the wording. We can change the wording in it. Since I work and I understand what they're saying, but I can see how someone else may not pick up on it because everybody's getting
Right.
a no-cost lunch at this time.
We can change it to qualify to receive. If that,
Okay, thank you.
Or just change the word shall to may? Would that,
Maybe, yeah.
Well, I think what she's saying is just
Gotcha.
school fees shall be waived for students who qualify to receive free or reduced price
even better,
lunch. So,
even better.
thank you.
All right, thank you. Any other discussion on this policy?
And Mr. Anderson, you said it would be basically line 19 where it says ESP bank account instead of the schools.
Yes.
Okay.
And then, I'm so sorry, I didn't get to my second page.
Okay.
On the grants, and I think that, Dr. Gilbert, you gave me some comment about this before, but on a different policy. Line 39, principals may apply for and receive grants. I would add, in coordination with district's grant manager, but funds must be recorded in a separate restricted fund account.
Say that again.
Principals may apply for and receive grants, which that's where you get to line 39. And then I would write, in coordination with district's grant manager.
I'm fine with that. I'd like to add with approval for the director, from the director of schools, and if we go
Okay.
that way.
In coordination with the director of schools, so what you said?
We can go with in coordination with it, because it's,
That's part of our
trying to think, Lisa, would there be exceptions to that?
That's part of our
Okay.
administrative process
It
now.
is.
And the reason it has to go into restricted account, because if a grant is being applied for, it's for a specific reason, and that's why it goes into a restricted account to only be spent for that reason. It's just further clarification of that line.
Right.
Okay.
I am very sensitive about that. I want to watch that out for Lisa, Ms. Trail, because
Okay.
we don't want every school applying for grants without there being some umbrella person in the district office.
And we have that in an AD, but I don't have any problem with that, so I'm going to add
Somebody
in
going rogue
coordination.
on you, so to speak.
Exactly. Exactly.
So in coordination with the systems grant manager and with approval from the director of schools. I'm good with that.
Thank you.
All right, do we have a motion to approve policy 2.400 with the revisions that have been stated?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. King. Have a second.
Second?
Thank you, Mr. Ballard. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? And there is none. Thank you. Next policy.
Next policy is policy 2.401 on gifts and bequests. It replaces board Operations Policy 28, and there have been no changes in this one after the first reading.
Move to approve.
Have a motion to approve, have a second.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Rainier. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? And there is none. Thank you.
The next policy is 2.402, investment earnings, and there's been no changes in this one after the first reading as well.
Have a motion to approve.
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. Second.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. King. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? And there is none. Thank you.
Next one is surplus property sales, policy 2.403, rescinds fiscal management 11. We did add one thing on line 4 where it says we can do a general circulation newspaper or online. We added online to that at your last, on the first reading, what you requested. That's the only change in this particular policy.
Have a motion to approve.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. King. Have a second.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Ballard. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? And there is none.
All right, next one is school support organizations, policy 2.404, rescinds board operations policy 39. There were no changes made in this policy either after our first reading.
All right, we have a motion to approve 2.404.
Move to approve.
Thank you, Mr. Ballard. Have a second.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. King. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? And there is none. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's yours, Ralph. We're back to 5.
Okay, 5.203, recommendations and file transfers. I recommend approval for second reading.
And there were no changes on this one.
I have a motion to approve 5.203.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. King. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Rainier. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? And there is none. Thank you.
Next policy is 5.400, personal health examinations, communicable diseases. We recommend approval for second reading.
And there were no changes on this one.
Mr. King?
I asked this last time. I don't remember the answer. Sorry. This is a policy for employees who are sick, for lack of a better word. Is there a policy about students who come to school sick, or how we don't want the children to come in and get everybody else sick? Or is that, do we cover that?
We will get with the student. We will get to the student policies later.
Okay, so there is, okay. Like I said, we're covered.
That's another batch.
We're on employees.
I thought we would. I just wanted to make sure. Because, I don't want we don't want a teacher going to school and getting everybody sick. We don't want a student coming in and doing the same. So, okay.
And Dr.
Sorry about
Gilbert, my policies aren't showing any changes, so you're going to have to help me out.
What? Oh, okay, I will.
We have a motion to approve 5.400.
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Rainier. Have a second.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. King. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? And there is none. Thank you.
Next policy is 5.6101, employee use of electronic social media. This is the exact same policy that we currently have, PER 46. We're just changing the numbers. We spent a lot of
There were
time.
no changes on this one. There was discussion, but no change.
We did have a lot of discussion on this policy last time.
That's right.
All right, to have a motion to approve?
I have a question first.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I was not here at the last meeting, and so I have not had time to watch it. I apologize. But when I went back through this, is there a place where we know that electronic media and communication is so important to everybody nowadays, but it used to be that a teacher could not use their school computer to check their own email, to do shopping, all of those things. Obviously, those would be on their own time, break time, before or after school, whatever. does this, I didn't see anywhere that this policy tells whether or not that's still the,
I am thinking, and I may need, I don't know whether there's another policy, Ralph, that,
I don't know.
because this is,
I think it
This is
talks
the
about the
social
internet. I think
media
there's
one.
another
The-
policy.
I believe there is a policy that talks about use of the electronic equipment.
okay,
This is strictly about
social.
media.
social media
Okay.
use.
Thank you.
All right, do we have a motion to approve policy 5.6101?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Ballard. Have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. King. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? And there is none. Thank you.
Thank you. Next policy is 5.608, tutoring for pay. I don't believe there were any
We
changes.
had, in the first line, we changed rendered to the pupil, so that any service rendered to the pupil on the school premises, that was the only change.
Okay. We had a good discussion on this one too, I think. All right, do I have a motion to approve 5.608?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. King. Have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Ballard. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? And there is none. Thank you.
Thank you. Next policy is 5.700, interim faculty positions.
We changed the line 11 to no expectancy. I think it had, there was another word similar to that.
I think that we were going to change that to no expectations.
No expectation? Okay, thank you very much. And also, we changed the title of this one, I believe, too, right? To interim faculty.
Just remove the word positions.
Okay.
That's what you did.
Have a motion to approve 5.700.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Settles. Have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Renier. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? And there is none. Thank you.
Thank you. Next board policy is 5.701, substitute teachers. Most of this is state law. We recommend approval for second reading.
And there were no changes.
Move to approve.
Thank you, Mr. Ballard. Have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposition? And there is none. Thank you.
Thank you. Next board policy is 5.702, student teachers.
There were no changes.
No changes on Mr. Ballard?
I just have a question, and should have asked last time, but anyway, are the student teachers operating under no compensation?
Correct.
Okay, so they don't receive any,
No, sir.
No.
okay.
All they receive is a grade.
Yeah. Well, that's what they're working
If
for,
they're
right? Okay. Thank
All right,
you.
do I have a motion to approve 5.702?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. King. Have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Renier. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? And there is none. Thank you.
Thank you. Next board policy is 5.801, director of schools, recruitment and selection.
And at the last meeting, we added E, a board member must recuse themselves from voting if an immediate family member is an applicant for the director of schools. And that was voted on at the last meeting.
All right, do we have a motion to approve 5.801?
I'm sorry. Is that the correct grammar usage?
Which one?
Which,
Where?
Recuse?
Recuse, I know. A board member, singular, themselves is, it would be
himself,
Himself.
himself, or,
Mm,
yes.
Good point.
Himself.
as a singular
Himself?
board member.
'Cause it's singular.
S-E-L-F?
Should be singular,
That's right.
probably, most likely singular.
All right, do we have a motion to approve 5.801?
So moved with the correction of the grammar.
Correct. Thank you, Ms. Renier. Have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? And there is none. Thank you.
Thank you. Next board policy is 5.802, qualifications and duties of the director of schools. I know that we had a addition in lines 48, 49 under financial management on the second page. develops and maintains strong communications with the city manager and mayor regarding the financial needs of the district.
And also under Community Public Relations, added a number 7 there, stays aware and knowledgeable about legislative issues and keeps the board informed.
We have a motion to approve 5.802.
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. Have a second.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. King. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? And there is none. Thank you.
Thank you. Next policy is 5.803, evaluation of the director of schools. I don't believe we had any changes, additions.
Have a motion to approve 5.803.
Move to approve.
Thank you, Mr. Ballard. All, a second. Have a second.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Suttles. Now, you have a question?
Well, I do have a question that I thought I was holding till the end when we get into that evaluation part. So I don't know if it would affect here or not, but we had talked many years about adding in some teacher input, and I didn't know if we moved in that direction, if it would need to be reflected here. I don't think so. I think I see that it would not. Okay. I move to approve.
I thought we already had that.
There's already a motion on the floor.
There's already a motion on the
Sorry.
floor to approve. All in favor of approving 5.803, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? And there is none. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Gilbert. The next,
Okay. Your next policy is, well, let me find it, is 6.200. This has to do with attendance. And you also have a student AD that is accompanying it because TSB recommended that we combine the policies, but then the specifics of attendance are in the AD, which is a good thing because we're going to need to change that. And I will be coming back with you probably with this policy after next year because the law has changed with that. So anyway, for right now, that's where we stand.
Okay, line 36 and 44. Okay. Absent 5 days with excuse shall be reported to the director of schools or designee. Who is the designee?
What we do is when we get with that, it's going to be probably Joe Marlin, or it could be April Zavisa, who also handles attendance.
Would that be the same as the principal or designee in line 44?
The principal is going to contact us if we have an excessive amount. They'll let us know that we'll be taking that to court. Is the way
No,
that
but in
works.
line 44, after being absent 10 days, the principal or designee shall attempt to meet in person with the student. Is that designee, that could be anybody that the principal designates, am I correct?
That's right. That can be the social worker, that can be the counselor, that can be, a lot of it will depend on the, assistant principal. It will depend on the need and what we see as the reasons.
Okay. Line 53. Let's see. Oh, it's on that same policy.
When it comes to tardies, unfortunately, there's really no meat in the tardies at all, and that's a real concern. But I've never seen superintendents or TSBA or anyone really come up with a good definition and a way for tardies to, there was one time when some school districts would add up enough tardies to say we have days, but there's no meat in that. There's no law that impacts the tardies, unfortunately.
All right, my question is, in line 53,
Okay?
school bus transportation is provided free of charge to students of Murfreesboro City?
I don't know.
That's not factual, is it? Do we need to do anything with that?
Where are we at?
Line 53.
We're under tardies.
We can cross that out if you want, and just go with, and for this reason, and have tardies related to car problems, traffic, oversleeping, et cetera, are not valid reasons for tardiness. It's up to the board, unless there would be something in state law, Kelly.
No, there's not. There's no mandate in state law that you provide that. So
This is going to be either pulled out, and I can't remember, but this will either be pulled out of your old policy, or it's going to be pulled out of TSBA. My bet is it maybe.
Well, obviously, it isn't true for one of our schools and for people out of zone.
And
and
people
for
with
people
a
within a
mile or
certain mile
That's right.
radius.
Right, so
Well, it's not a factual statement. The only thing I'm asking is, do we need to pull out that because it says school bus transportation provided free of charge?
Yes, still.
Yes.
send
I'd
it.
say pull it.
I mean, that's,
And just start with
Delete.
you
tardies.
still got the same things in there about excused or not excused reasons for being tardy.
correct.
And the thing about bus transportation is just there.
Right.
So I would think that perhaps we need to remove that part of line 53.
Good call.
Okay, Ms. Renier?
I just have a question on the paragraph that begins with line 43. On notification that a student has been absent 10 days without adequate excuse. Is that 10 days consecutively or total of 10 days for the school year at that point?
Total 10 days.
I'm just,
That's state law, I think.
is it?
Shelley?
Okay.
Yes, it is.
I'm just thinking back to a personal issue with my daughter who had migraines, and she missed 20 days one year. We got a letter from Oakland, and, you know, I went in and talked to them and explained everything, although they'd been getting the notes all the way along, but, you know, she would be one that would be called into question there.
One of the, and one of the things that we may want to discuss with Representative Terry, because we've been meeting with principals, Lori and I have, for just sharing all the data that has been seeping in over the last several weeks. And one of the things that you'll hear about concerns are those students. We have some medically fragile students who are going to miss school. And should that count against the district? For high schools, what you'll hear with superintendents talking about high schools is, in our opinion, college visit days are legitimate days, but those are also going to be counted against the students. So when you look at the new rubric for what is going to count on against a school, it's pretty extensive. So it includes not just suspensions, but it also includes excused and unexcused absences, college visit days, and those kinds of things. So I think you're going to see some changes in that, and possibly in attendance too.
We have a motion to approve policy 6.200 with the changes noted.
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. Have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. King. All in favor say aye. Any opposition? There is none. Thank you.
Okay. 6.201 has to do with compulsory attendance ages, and most of this is going to be state law.
Can't change that. Have a motion to approve policy 6.201.
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. Have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. King. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? And there is none. Thank you.
And those are your board policies for tonight, and we'll have some more ready for you at the next meeting.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Can't wait.
We need cheerleaders cheering or something.
All right, our next item is Dr. Gilbert's evaluation document and timeline.
This is essentially the same evaluation document that we have had for a few years. The part that does change has to do with the section C, appendix C. So you'll notice that on number 6, 7, 8, and 9, you have 10 ready there instead of TCAP, but this is the document that you have used. The sections are kind of representative as far as the weighting of what the principal's weightings are on their own evaluation. So Section A would be 35%. That's filled out by the folks that report directly to me. Section B is filled out by the board, which has been 50%, and then Section C is 15%. The document is there along with the timeline. This is a very similar timeline to last year. We have contacted TSBA, and they will be happy to facilitate this for you. So essentially, the steps then after approval tonight of a document, and this would be for this past year, would be that those folks that do report to me and also the board I would be submitting evidence to you by November the 1st, and then the evaluations would be completed between the 1st and also the 14th, and then they would be back to report back to you on the 28th.
Okay, Ms. Renier?
Well, this is what I brought up earlier. I think it would be great to have some kind of input from some teachers. And I just, in my mind, thought, what if we could ask TSBA to fashion basically these same types of questions, probably just copy them verbatim, but then to make sure that we have nothing to do with it, nor you have anything to do with it, ask TSBA if they would just send randomly 5 or 10 per school, and they gather the information. That way we have nothing to do with it, and that way we get some input from the faculties as well. I just think that that's real important.
Here's my only concern about that, and so I'm just going to be honest.
Please do.
The faculty does not report directly to me.
That's true.
The principals report directly to me. And so I think that the board would, well, I'll just leave it at that.
Mr. Settles?
I was going to echo that. My question was going to be if the faculty, do the faculty evaluate the principals? Is that done?
The faculty, the evaluation of the principal, if I take that into account, actually, no. The principal is, their evaluation is based on the team evaluation.
Right.
It does have to do, there is a document, there's part of that does have to do with the climate of the school. There's part of that does have to do whether the principals are developing teacher leaders. There's a part of that does have to do with whether they are providing professional development. There are those kinds of things. But as far as any determination that the faculty would have, that would really be to come, just like I have a contract with them, with principals, you all have a contract with me. So that would be the discussion that we would have there. Can I dismiss a principal because of negativity among the faculty? Yes, I can, but I would be looking for my job at that point, if there's a problem there, just like we talked about with the teachers, is to help that principal and try to figure out a way to support them and to help them be better. So unless there would be, as far as moving principals, there would have to be substantial evidence of being ineffective for me to do that.
Then I kind of echo then the same sentiment that since the teachers don't report directly, I would.
I think part of it, not a concern, but things that I'd heard when they did do the survey in the spring, and some people were disappointed in scores, apparently there's not a differentiation between school administrators and perhaps central office administrators or higher ups, be it, perhaps the coaches or whatever. So I don't know if there's some way, I don't know, but I don't know. Just
What are you getting at? I don't know either that. I don't understand where you're coming from.
Well, just hearing comments made, through the years that teachers would like to have some kind of input as well as far as evaluating perhaps, they're graded on a team evaluation as the principal is, but that's done by someone different. It's not done by a group of your peers.
I think and you all are free to do whatever you want to do. I think, to me, the difference is the principal is with the teacher every day, so the principal is observing that teacher. The principal is getting feedback with the teacher. Essentially, I do the same thing with principals to a degree, and with the folks that report to me at central office. So I think that still there's a direct line from the teacher evaluation to the principals. I don't evaluate teachers.
Right.
And I'm not with teachers every day.
Right.
And I'm not with principals every day, but I am close to principals.
But you know what they're doing.
Right.
Just like
Right.
a principal walks around a building, they know what the teachers are doing in their building.
Right. And a principal is going to know more what I'm doing than a teacher will know what I'm
Right.
doing.
Right. Okay, I certainly understand that as far as this.
Yeah,
I think we use another instrument to give them that opportunity versus her evaluation.
Right.
I mean, that's-
Yes.
Didn't we get some of that information just
when we did
from
the survey.
the estimate that we just got back not long ago?
The climate, well, it wasn't the climate survey. It was, it was
Yeah,
the.
we had that.
Well,
There was a lot of
there is the
questions
climate
on that.
survey with the state, and then there was the, not SACS, Advanced Ed
Advanced
survey.
Ed.
Advanced Ed.
And we'll
survey.
have both of those this year, too.
Yeah, there's a
So
lot
we
of that on
still
there.
have advanced ed,
We have it this
finishing
year.
it this year, and
Right.
then we're out after that.
Right.
Okay.
And I would suggest if the board wants another survey next year, that we go with the state, not the climate survey that's on the website, but the state survey that you all looked at last year that includes, I believe it's included, I'm thinking the support staff, the educational assistants, and I believe it also included the teachers and also, I think, parents maybe and students. And I haven't looked at that, but I know there were several groups that it included that the other one didn't. And I think that might be something to consider next year.
Mr. Ballard?
Well, I just want to say, I agree with what Dr. Gilbert has said as far as the responsibility for her principals, and then the teachers report to, the principals report to her. But I also agree with the survey information, so I would think the survey information that we've had is a tool for us to operate with to feedback when we do the survey, do the evaluation of Dr. Gilbert.
Right.
So it's telling us the information that we should know to be able to take this evaluation form and feed that back into this evaluation form. At least that's the way I perceive it. Or that's the way I will probably operate.
Probably, I agree. All right. Any other discussion on the evaluation? Do you,
We'll need a vote on it, Butch, on the form.
approve of the document and also the timeline? That's what we're looking at.
So moved.
All right, thank you, Mr. Ballard. Have a second?
Is that on both?
Yes,
Second.
thank you. Any other discussion?
So to make sure, this November 14th is the deadline to have the evaluations submitted to TSBA. That's not when we start sending them in.
Right.
That's when they should be at TSBA. So if you've waited till the 15th, we're too late.
And I will get you that evidence by, like I have every year, by the 1st.
And the question that I had was, who does the coordination evaluation process? Is it from the board or?
It's TSBA,
SBA does.
yeah. It's
I'm saying who does from our side, it says coordination evaluation process with TSBA.
Lisa contacts
Okay.
TSBA. They take it once,
Once we
like I
say
have
yes.
said, I asked them, I said, if we get this to you, if we get everything to you, can you have it back to us by the 28th? And they said yes. And I said, well, we'll get the document to you. TSBA actually helped develop the document originally.
Gotcha.
So they do all, it's totally anonymous. And they send it out, and then Lisa works to return it. And I think they send it straight to, I believe, straight to
We
TSBA.
have a motion and a second to approve. All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposition? And there is none. Thank you.
Okay, reports and information, Gary?
Okay, your first report is your revenue and expenditure report. We're at the 25% line for the for the fiscal year. on our income and expenses, this one, the income is showing it's short $869,000 because the state did not get the money to the county to get to us. So we've got it now, but it didn't come in time to hit this report.
Okay.
So it's $868,778 short, which means we should be at negative $2,481,923 rather than the number you see of $3,300,000. So we do have the money, it's just that the state got it to the county late, and then we got it late. Last year at this time, we were $2,111,519 in the hole. Remember, we don't climb out of the hole until February or March, so there is some red ink there. So on your revenue side, if you go and you add that $800-something thousand back in, we're at 15.76% of revenue collected, and last year at this time we were at 15.6. So we're right where we should be on the revenue side. The sales tax ticked up this time. We're up $57,262 over last year. Now, last year at this time we were up $114,000, so we haven't quite caught up with it. We are hopeful we have a good holiday season with lots of people shopping in Murfreesboro, buying lots of stuff for their family and friends, and contributing to the sales tax. So, on the expense side, we're at 18.6%. Last year at this time we were at 18.7%. So we're tracking where we should be at this point. So if anyone has any questions, I'll be glad to try to answer them.
Any questions on?
No, I'm just glad that you mentioned that the $800-something thousand, because that jumped out at me. So I was glad to know that it did come, because I was going to
Charge
ask.
them interest on getting the money to the county late. Don't you think?
Oh, this was the state. No, it wasn't.
That's, I know.
Any other reports?
All right, the next report is your budget development timeline. We getting ready to crank up our budget season again here.
Just have that.
The part that I know interests y'all the most is when you will get the first draft of the budget, and we will have the distributed to you on March 27th is our projected date to distribute the proposed budget. We'll schedule with you, or you can schedule the work sessions from April 2nd to April 13th. We have that window of time, and then after you come up with your final, we'll produce the final draft based on your input on April 17th. And then at the board meeting in April, we would ask that you vote on it so we can get it to the city council by April 30th. But we're getting ready to start the process.
Yay, raw.
Any questions to Mr. Anderson? Do we have a enrollment report?
We had it 2 weeks ago. I have another copy if you want to see it again. I brought additional copies of it.
Is it from the 2 weeks ago?
Yeah, it's the same. It's the same. It's the end of the second accounting period.
All right. All right, any other reports from central office? All right. Other business. Chairman's challenge. So get ready, here it comes.
And you sure it's not like a weight loss thing, or?
Hold on to your hat there, Miss Smith, and you'll find out exactly what it is.
Thank you.
There's one for you, one for Mr. Sutton.
Oh, they're labeled.
Yes, they're labeled. I wanted you to have your own personal copy.
All right.
And
If I can read this.
Dr. Gilbert, I had one for you, I thought.
That's all right. Oh,
Anybody got two folders? Well, maybe not.
Oh, I do. I just felt
Okay.
it. I have Dr. Gilbert's.
Well, would you pass that
I'll
on,
be
please,
glad
to
to.
her?
Thank you,
you very much. All right, it's really very simple, people. It's a very simple challenge that I'm making to you to have completed within the next year. That's a year from today. Two things. In 2015, we lost our distinguished board status with TSBA. And I would like for us very much to get that recognition and that status back again. I have given you a list of the things that we need to do. Some of them we've already done. But we will just need to make sure that TSBA knows what we have done and what we continue to do. The other thing is a personal challenge for you. I have given to you your boardmanship packet, and it tells you the things that you have been credited with so far. I also have given you a statement from TSBA on what you need to do in order to obtain the next level of the boardmanship program. All of that can be done between now and our next district fall meeting of next year. And what my encouragement is to you, my challenge is for you to obtain the next level. Now, you may be able to obtain 2 levels. It tells you in the report that you got back from them how many points or how many events and things that you need for the next level. So if you don't need but very little, say, for level 2, it's very possible that within the next year you can obtain enough points and events to also get level 3. There are 3 of us, I think, that are level 4, Ms. Renier, Mr. Barrett, and myself, and we have to do it like a portfolio, and we have to contact TSBA, and they'll send that information to us. You have in front of you what you need to do for your next level. So my challenge to you is very simple. Get her done.
Challenge accepted.
I don't think it's impossible, and I think at the same time, when we are recognized as a board of distinction, I think we all will be very proud.
Yes.
It's a good thing to have with TSBA.
The other thing, since we know Gail Porterfield is going to be our representative at the Read to Succeed, I wrote Robin today to ask how we get tickets and so on and so forth, and where it was being held. It's going to be at World Outreach Church. Tickets are $50, and I remember a couple years ago, Mary Wade got tickets for us, and we all went. So I think that would be nice, but I think we need to make a decision as to how many might be able to go that day. I think it was November the 9th, I think, right? And there was something else I thought about.
What day of the week is that on?
I think it's a Thursday.
Thursday.
The other issue with the boardsmanship, they have lightened up the, maybe that's not the right terminology, they have made it a little less difficult to attain the boardsmanship award or the Board of Distinction award. Used to be that all the board members had to attend the fall district meeting. All the board members had to attend the convention. Now it just says it's the majority. So we can do that very easily, I think. And we did so with the fall district meeting. So I think it's going to be easier. I have those little flyers for everybody in the trunk of my car.
For what?
For the Board of Distinction.
Okay.
I'll try to remember to take them out of the trunk next time.
All right.
Mr. Campbell, a couple of things. I want to thank the foundation, as announced earlier in the meeting, for their generous donation and all the work that they do for the district. I think it's phenomenal that we can get over $50,000 in grants, and grants the size that the teachers need, which is really unusual. So I think that flexibility is huge. So I want to thank everybody associated with starting the board, and also everyone who is currently on it. The other thing that I want to do is I want to thank the board for its support. Recently we found out that we're an exemplary school district, which is extraordinary. And so I want to thank the board, and I want to thank all the support staff, all the teachers, all the administrators that absolutely made that possible. So I think that's quite something to tout.
Okay. Ms. Smith?
I also want to, that is a big effort for the teachers and the leadership for our school district to be acknowledged as an exemplary school district. I am, on the flip side of that, I'm very proud of our district. I'm not pleased with the state. And the one thing right now that I'm thinking about, because of our friends in Williamson County, they have written a resolution in hopes of not having to include the test scores, saying it now. Let's establish now that we're not going to include the test scores in the children's grades. I've been very disappointed in the years past that we've told our kids that their test scores were going to count in their grades, and then we don't. Then when it comes time, we don't have the test scores in, so they haven't gone into the grades. Well, the kids have done their part, but some company that should be punished, should be penalized, has not done their part. So I want this board to think about following suit and not including the grades. Going ahead and saying, and writing a resolution requesting that we not include the grades, the scores within the last, in the last report card. Grades.
So it was it's state law, isn't it? At this
We
point
would,
in
we would
time?
need to lobby the legislature, but I do think that she's absolutely right.
Oh, I do too.
What we know is, and the way that reads, and Mr. Anderson, you all just did this, so, but the way it reads is if we don't get the scores back within 5 days of the last day of school, then the board can have a vote to not include it, and you all have chosen to do that, thank goodness. But I would love to see that whole idea done away with. We know it's going to be ineffective next year because although we'll have some schools, because we're not going to get our grades back,
Right.
We're just not. Even when we go online, there are going to be some questions that are going to be hand scored, which are going to take at least a month to do. Well, if we're not taking the test until May, we're still not going to get the scores back. So I think it's a great idea for the board to write a resolution that would do away with making the tests as part of the student grade.
If we do the resolution, and I agree with it, then what are the repercussions? What can we, just because we write the resolution does not mean that that's what's going to happen. It's like the letter we wrote earlier about doing the testing, okay? But it's just letting them know where we stand.
It is, and I think this would go straight to the legislature, so I think that would make a difference. Because I do think the legislature is understanding at least a little bit
Right now.
about the whole testing predicament. So I think that there's certainly, I can't see any reason to have it at all for next year anyway. And unless we're going to go strictly online with every grade level, which I do not see happening, because third and fourth, there's no movement to do that. There may be in fourth, but not third. There's nothing even out there for a pilot for a few years. Then you're not going to have those scores back. I don't think.
I also think it was very wise of you to make the decision early not to test online, to do paper pencil. So I appreciate that. I know the teachers probably do as well. But I guess when I was responding to something that you sent out, it just didn't even dawn on me that a third of our school year has already come and gone, and now we get the scores. A third of the
From
year.
last year.
That's
We
right.
haven't
Last
gotten
year.
the scores for our children.
That's right.
Just so you know.
That's right.
I do not know.
You don't have it yet?
The
We don't
individual
have
student scores are not out there. So as far as being able to help a particular student, which is exactly what our goal is, it's our goal just as human beings, that's our goal.
Right.
And for the board, that is the mission statement, is for each child to have academic and personal success. We do not have those scores. So while we can look and say this subgroup may be off, we don't know what children are included that did not do well or that did do well. So it's really hard to target instruction. And Lori's hoping that we hear something in the next week, but we still don't have the individual scores.
Well, That's very true, but it's also true that a teacher greets her children the beginning of August, whenever it is that we start school, and in a few days, she has a good grasp on what those children are able to do and perhaps not able to do. So all the kudos in the world to every teacher in every classroom across this school system, because they're the ones who are dealing with this. As much as we might say, oh yeah, the board's behind you, and Dr. Gilbert's behind you, and your principals are behind you, but it's those teachers who are in those classrooms with those children who are making these academic decisions and doing it to the best of their ability. It doesn't matter what that paper comes back and says about little Johnny. Miss Smith knows little Johnny, and she's doing the best she can for them, and I think that's what's so important, and we always need to remember that. But as far as this fiasco, last year when we submitted our letter to our, what is she called? The, not director of, what is she? Commissioner, yeah, there you go. The commissioner, and we were pretty much had our hands slapped and said, well, if you do that, then you don't get any funding from the state, blah, 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 blah. If enough school boards, this is what I said last year, if enough school boards across this state get up in arms and say this has got to stop, and we get those legislators to agree with us, perhaps there will be some changes. This is ridiculous. And I'm sorry, I'm on my high horse. I'll stop.
Well, will it be addressed at the state convention in November? Is that?
I doubt it. I mean, I don't know, but I doubt it. I don't see what they could do there.
It will be more addressed, and you weren't here. Representative Terry has scheduled a meeting on December the 4th at 5 o'clock at the county school board office with the commissioner, and is entertaining questions from both boards and both groups of teachers for her that night. And I think what Brian is doing is certainly calling attention, and he has been doing so, along with some of our other legislators from our area have done the same thing. And I think, as Linda stated a minute ago, I think the legislators are now beginning to really, really get on board and say, enough is enough. Let's, my granddaughter would say, let's get her done and get her done today, and don't worry. I mean, you know, let's get it done right like we're supposed to. The resolution that Wichita County Board sent, you know, is fantastic, and I think we can do the same thing. I just hope it doesn't fall on deaf ears, but like you say, the squeaky wheel's the one that gets greased first, isn't it?
Well,
Wes?
Yeah, Ms. Smith and Dr. Gilbert, if we take the position that we're not going to include the scores in the grades, what happens to the scores? I mean, is it just null and void and we just wasted our time with the students?
No,
Not in the grades,
it's
but-
feedback. It's feedback about how your child is doing. When I was a child, they didn't go in grades.
Right.
I mean, and it was good information and to have anyway. I
Okay,
mean,
so it's treated as feedback for.
it's feedback, yeah. I mean, that's what, I mean, they
Has
haven't.
progress been made?
It's what the progress is. It's not, but what I don't want them to think is that it's going to be included in their grades, and
Well, I
then
don't
we
know.
have to pull it back, and I just hate that. I
It
mean,
would be
just,
retroactive if you did it anyway, wouldn't it?
Yeah, you wouldn't be able to. There's no way to do it if they don't get it back
I
in
mean, if
5
the grades
days.
come, grades are not,
well,
for the individual students, are not available yet, right? Is that what I'm hearing? It's not, so. it
right,
would
now
be-
I'm talking about for this
Right.
current school
But
year.
even what we get, if it comes in tomorrow, what we get have to be retroactive to last year's
But we
year-end
had a
grading.
vote that said,
Right.
at the end of the school year,
Mm-hmm.
that since the grades weren't in,
Then
we
don't.
didn't
We're not
include
gonna
it.
do 'em.
Yeah.
I'm just asking theoretically, that's what we'd have to do. It wouldn't, I mean, that.
It wouldn't even happen theoretically
that
because there's
ship
no
has
way to go
sailed,
back.
So the
What
grades
what
are
we
great.
get at the end of the year, we get something called quick scores that you can figure out kind of, and it's been after the school year has been out. The reason they give those quick scores is they'll try to figure out, okay, what does this look like across 100 points, so across a grading, and that's how those are figured into the grade. But what happens is you have to pull teachers back in because those aren't in a lot of times until June or mid-June. What we don't have, and then they go back and they have to look at the scores and figure out what's proficient, what's not proficient, and that's what is truly the measure of the children, and that's what we're still waiting on.
So, and there's a big difference, in my opinion, on what a child's quick score is and what the end result score is. It kind of fools you.
I'd heard that.
And we had, there were a couple of school districts that a couple of years ago did bring their teachers back in mid-June, but like you said, the ship really is already,
Yeah.
I mean, it's gone.
It just seems that should we write a resolution or whatever, I don't see that it would have any effect whatsoever on the Department of Education, because obviously that's what's happened the last 2 years. We haven't used the scores. So how can you tell us we have to use them when we never get them? It's just kind of a moot point, but at least we put it in writing. And this idea of the Questar or whatever it was and the other companies and, oh, we've got this much discrepancy and we don't have this, they still don't have all their eggs in one basket. They still, I thought with all the brouhaha last year, this year was going to just be smooth sailing. And obviously that hasn't happened. And though it may not be reflected for us in the K through 6 world, it's happened to a lot of the high schools. And when it says, oh, well, it's only 13% or it's only 3%, that's still, when you think of the number of students in the state, that's still a large number. And for them to say, oh, you know, this is okay and it's not that bad. Baloney, it is bad. When you're the one responsible for the testing of the children in the state of Tennessee and you can't get it together, yes, it's bad. Sorry.
Ms. Smith?
Do I need to make a motion? Do we need to vote about writing a resolution? As such, I just don't know how we proceed with this.
Go ahead and make a motion.
I don't know. You can make a motion.
Make a motion.
Do we do a resolution?
I make a motion that we write a resolution to not include our TN Ready scores in our last grading period for 2018 spring.
And forever thereafter.
Okay.
Do you mean to ask the legislature to change the law that requires us to include them?
So we don't put a year on it, so, correct.
Good.
So the resolution would go to the legislature and copied
Copy to her.
Candace McQueen.
Yes.
We could hand deliver that December the 4th.
Well, I would like for this to be done
I know.
well before, so that the kids, I'm more concerned about the kids in this end.
I can have it to you by your next board meeting.
Thank you.
Okay.
To get a grade.
All right, you have a motion. We have a second.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Renier. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? And there is none. I did not hear back from anybody pertaining to our date for a meeting with the legislators.
Yes, you did. You heard.
Well, I heard, yeah, I did today, or yesterday, from Linda.
I've been
from
calling
Nancy,
forever.
yeah, okay. We would like to do it, I really would like to do it before we had this meeting with the commissioner. So I'm looking at possibly maybe at a Thursday, November the 30th. I haven't checked with Dr. Gilbert to see if that's permissible.
Thursday, the 30th, you said?
Uh-huh.
Something's on that day.
That's fine.
Nobody has a problem that you know of right now?
No.
No.
Sound good?
Or do you
And
want
I'll-
to do it on our board meeting day, which would be, I think, the 28th? No?
I'm not worried about it.
Okay.
Well, I don't care if you want to do it on, well, want to do it on the 28th, but
Oh, wait, no.
I need to
It
see,
would be the 21st.
I need to see, coordinate this with the county school board as well. And that 30th may not be a good night, because they normally meet on Thursday, don't they? Okay.
I have no problem that whole week.
Okay, all right. Well then, did we-
Mr. Barrett says it's okay.
What?
He's watching at home.
Jared,
says
yeah.
It's okay with him.
Hi, Jared.
We wave to him.
All right, Thanksgiving is on the 23rd, isn't it?
I don't know.
Right?
It is.
Okay. If what if we went to the next Tuesday, the 28th?
Well, that would,
Is that board meeting?
that would come up as a question. We always sort of hem and haw about whether or not
About
to have the
board
board
meeting.
meeting
Yeah, the
would
28th is-
theoretically be the 21st, which would be our board meeting,
Right.
2 days before Thanksgiving.
And as of right now, Tuesday, the 28th is a scheduled meeting,
Okay,
Correct.
as of right now. So
okay. So
unless
it's already been changed?
No, well, I mean, it was on the
falls
list
that
we
way.
put out.
Okay.
The fourth Tuesday.
No, it's the 5th Tuesday.
All right. Let me get in touch with Mr. Jordan, with the county board, and then we'll look somewhere toward the end of November. That would be permissible to everyone.
Oh, nobody can. Yes, that's fine.
All right.
I have one more thing.
All right, sir.
There's a, and I thought I saw this, there's an advocacy group, CAPE, I don't know if you all know it, CAPE. They're circulating a petition asking for a pause in the use of TN Ready scores to penalize teachers and students. This was just out yesterday, whereas TN Ready testing in 2017 resulted in large number of scoring errors, et cetera, et cetera. It is online at tnedreport.com. And this is, I know I'd heard something the other day, but this is good reading, and there's a resolution already that they're proposing to put forth this group. So if you go online to tnedreport.com, you can pull it up. I just Googled, I thought there was a lawsuit, there was a possibility, but this is the resolution that this group is putting out. We may want to take a look at.
Say that one more time.
tnedreport.com.
Okay, thank you, sir. All right, any other business to come before the board tonight? Dr. Gilbert, we hope you have a very nice day tomorrow on your birthday.
Thank you, sir.
Wow.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. I appreciate very much what you all do. I appreciate what you do for the school district. Thank you for your advocacy for children and for all the employees. It makes a difference.
And sometimes
Mr.
for the
Shacklet,
superintendent.
because you have a downtown business, we wish you the best on Saturday.
Thank you much. We'll do our best.
Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Do I have a second? All in favor, good night.
Good night.
All right.